right, welcome back to another episode of Beer, Bacon, and Bros. Here we are tonight. It's just Keith and Chris. Alex and Adam are both out this evening. But we're going to jump into some, well, I guess it's not even not so early because we're just 2 weeks away from the end of the college football season. We're going to jump into what...
Let's call it last-minute Heisman Trophy.
There you go, last-minute Heisman Trophy predictions. So, yeah. But before we do that, make sure you are subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out a lot, help us grow the family. You guys are doing great. Our numbers are getting
we're over 180 now.
Yeah, we're growing, so we really appreciate all you guys' support. Make sure you're dropping some likes and some comments on those videos. We'll get back to every single comment that you guys give. You can tell us what you think we're crazy, if we're spot on. You know, how your day was. We'll converse with it. We don't care. So
literally.
Yeah. Literally. So, like I said, we're going to jump into last-minute predictions for the Heisman Trophy. Going into it, I know you got the list set up here. I know you and I kind of have our dark horse who we both agree has had a phenomenal season. But before we get into our dark horses, who do you think, off the top, just looking at the teams so far and the names that are on this list, who do you think is probably the forerunner or the guy who's in the lead right now?
Yeah, I mean, I took a look at the betting odds from Vegas Insider, MGM, FanDuel, and Caesar Sportsbooks, and kind of put this list together. And it's actually in the order. So C.J. Stroud is still currently the favorite for the Heisman. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, I know he's had a good season. I think he's just kind of done what everybody thought he was going to do. So I was a little surprised that he was actually the favorite for the Heisman because I thought at this point most of the voters would be on Hendon Hooker. I mean, the way Tennessee's season has been, coming in as like an 8-win team, and all of a sudden now they're probably going to be an 11-1 team by the time their regular season is over.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think Hendon Hooker has really carried his team to where he's gotten, which I always like. I always like the Heisman going to the player that had the most outstanding season, like the trophy is, said to go to, not the best player on the best team, which is
like RG3 10 years ago. When RG3 won it, he wasn't necessarily on the best team, but he was arguably the best player in college football that year.
Yeah. And so, I think you look at Stetson Bennett, he's down this list. He's in number 7. Yeah, he's 6 on this list. Stetson Bennett is probably the most well-known player on his team, which is clearly the best team in college football in Georgia.
Right.
And so I just don't look at Stetson Bennett and go, this is a Heisman guy right now. Right now, voting bettors have C.J. Stroud, Hendon Hooker, and then our guy, Drake May.
Oh, yeah.
So
Drake May, if you didn't catch that, Drake May is definitely our black horse to win this, dark horse to win this one.
No.
I mean, the kid's had such a phenomenal season. 3,400 yards, 34 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. I mean, the kids just look good coming because he was a transfer too, right? He's
from Charlotte, so Huntersville, North Carolina, technically, but
10 minutes up the road. It's fine.
But yeah, 3,400 yards and 34 touchdowns with only 3 picks so far in the 2022 season. Obviously, North Carolina 9-1. They would not be here without him.
No,
it's really crazy to go. Sam Howell was such a big name for so long at North Carolina.
This kid surpassed some of Sam Howell's numbers.
Yeah, he's 19. He's a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, looking phenomenal.
I mean, this is a guy that, from what I've been reading, is played his way into probably being the number 1 overall pick next year as a redshirt sophomore.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to look at this, and for me, I was a little surprised that he's actually a third. I haven't heard enough about him for the Heisman.
I'd like to see some more on him. I think it's because he plays for North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's not USC. It's not Ohio State. It's not Georgia. It's not Alabama. But I mean, the kid has just produced all year long, and I mean, yes, it's the ACC, but he's still just putting up ungodly numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with you. I think part of the reason that he's sitting in third and people aren't talking about him as much is actually because he plays for, while it's a 9-1 North Carolina, it's a team that's barely in the top 25.
Right.
It's a team that, doesn't have a chance at winning a national championship, and so it's not that big-name guy like, C.J. Stroud or Hendon Hooker right now, whose teams have a very good likelihood of making the playoffs.
I mean, I think he's going to make a name for himself when they meet up with Clemson in the ACC championship. I know that has nothing to do with the votes on this, But that's where he's going to make his money is when he meets up against Clemson in the ACC championship.
Yeah, and if he could take down Clemson, maybe he gets a couple more votes. Maybe he swings a couple people and says, "Wow, this kid really." Because you're talking about a guy like if you look at his numbers compared to C.J. Stroud's right now, C.J. Stroud has 700 less yards than him, same amount of touchdowns. C.J. Stroud has one more interception. His QBR is a little bit higher.
It's only 2% higher.
Yeah, and I mean it's first in the country to Drake May's fourth in the country. So. C.J. Stroud, of course, obviously has the rushing ability, but he's only run for 83 yards this season, no touchdowns. And you look at Drake May, he's actually run for 584 yards and 5 touchdowns, too.
So he's accounted for 4,000 touchdowns. 4,000 yards for the entire season.
Yeah, and 39 touchdowns to literally 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
I mean, something that you would think somebody probably needs to consider a little bit when talking about it.
The person that I would put ahead of C.J. Stroud, for me personally, would be Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has put up fantastic numbers in USC in that first year under Riley. Of course, we all know Lincoln Riley just breeds quarterbacks. So I mean, he's just like Lane Kiffin when it comes to quarterbacks. They just put up these ungodly numbers. I mean, he's thrown for 3,000 yards, has 31 touchdowns to 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
How many rushing yards is he?
283 and 6 touchdowns too.
Okay, so he's at like 3,300 yards with 39 total touchdowns. I mean, he's right there in the same amount of touchdowns.
And just the way that Southern Cal has gone from what were they 4-8 last
They
year?
They were horrible last year to be undefeated this year.
Yeah, well, no, they're 9-1. They took a loss to Utah.
They did lose. That is correct.
Big week for them too because they have UCLA this week at UCLA. So which is
a big game.
Yeah, that's a big game for them. It's a big chance for Caleb Williams to be able to kind of step up on a national scale. A televised late night game, 10:30 game for them. So, great opportunity for him. And I was going to pull up Hendon Hooker's numbers while we were looking at it. Hendon, 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I'm a little surprised he hasn't actually thrown for more touchdowns as explosive as Tennessee's offense is.
Yeah, and I feel like the touchdown numbers are what's going to keep him out of that Heisman Trophy.
I mean, they got some easy games. They got South Carolina and Vandy left, so.
Yeah, but at the same time,
the guy could easily throw 10 touchdowns in those.
I mean, he could, but if you're Tennessee, do you lead with aspirations of making it to the playoff? Depending on what happens in the SEC championship, do you play him?
Yeah, that's a good question.
For more than a half, especially if you're. I mean, Vanderbilt. Yeah, they just beat Kentucky, but I mean, Kentucky's nothing. But I mean, you go into Vandy. Do you really run the risk of a team that you should probably be favored by at least 35 points on to play Hendon Hooker that entire game and leave an opportunity for him to get hit and break a leg?
Probably won't happen.
So, I mean, I'd be more concerned about him against South Carolina's defense than Vandy's defense. Well, that's saying something because South Carolina's defense has been horrible the last 3 weeks. But yeah, I think his lack of touchdown numbers are what's going to keep him away from that Heisman, and that's what's going to give it to either Stroud, Williams, or Drake May.
Okay. So let's take the pick. Who do you actually think is going to win the Heisman? We talked about Drake being our dark horse. Who do you actually think wins the Heisman?
I think they give it to Stroud.
Yeah.
It's been such a long time since. Well, Derrick Henry won it in 2017, 2018. He was the last non-quarterback to win it.
Should be 2018.
I know Devonta Smith won it in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, he won it 2020.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's so hard to overcome a quarterback in when it comes to the Heisman. So I mean, I'm gonna have to go with Stroud. I mean, he's the front runner right now. It's really gonna. I really think it's gonna depend on what happens in that Ohio State Michigan game.
Yeah.
If he has a good game, I think they'll if they bounce back and beat Captain Khaki Pants this year, I think they'll it'll pretty much solidify giving Stroud that Heisman.
I don't want to go with you, but I think I'm gonna have to go with you. I think CJ.
Yeah, I mean it's
CJ's got the numbers on. It's so hard because CJ doesn't have any rushing stuff, right? Like he's only got 83 yards and 0 touchdowns. You look at Hendon Hooker, he's got 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Drake May's got 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. Caleb Williams has 280 yards.
Well,
and 5 touchdowns.
The other thing that you can look at that in that sense is do they don't really need Stroud to run the ball.
Yeah.
So they're playing it.
Well, their run is terrible right now. Ohio State can't run the ball anyways. Right. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna take Hendon Hooker. I actually think people are gonna look at this and say, you know what, Hendon has led Tennessee to a 11-1 season. They're not going to get a chance at the the SEC championship game, obviously, but I still think Tennessee sneaks in as the 4 spot. Check our video on that coming up next. But I think that Tennessee sneaks in at the 4 spot. He's going to have a chance, and I actually think Hendon Hooker's going to get it. I think people are going to look at it and say he deserves it for helping lead Tennessee to the playoffs.
Okay.
So we'll go with that. Hit us in the comments. Let us know who you think is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And as always, we appreciate you. Like, comment, subscribe.